Hi, my name is Atar Shalar.
My name is Rasha.
I'm Krishy.
And I'm not Christian.
And today we'll be discussing the Qing Dynasty from the period 1450 to 1750. To begin with, we'll be examining the political and military aspect of this dynasty, specifically how rulers used a variety of methods to legitimize and maintain their power. Um, we see that in this dynasty, there's an absolute imperial monarchy with the emperor and his family members holding most of the power. How is this possible? First, through the recruitment and use of bureaucratic elites, as well as the military to have control over population and resources. We see that China is divided into 9 provincial regions, each ruled by imperially appointed person. And it's important to note that there's a grand secretariat, which is the most powerful part of the central government. It is an administrative cabinet containing the 6 ministries. We see that power starts here and continues all the way to the local level. Bureaucratic elites are chosen through the civil service exams. This is an exam used to choose officials in the government and tests Confucian principles. Uh, we see that in the military, it's organized into a banner system where each banner has a particular function, like taxation or recruiting soldiers. The banner system has a special class of people called banner men, where you can only be a part of this if you inherit the membership. This helped the Qing consolidate their power as well as land and income. Through the military, the Qing was able to suppress other political influences from rising and thereby maintaining their control. The second development we see is that the rulers legitimize their rule through religion, art, and monumental architecture. Specifically, the judicial branch based their criminal penal code off of Confucian principles um, to make people adhere to moral and legal virtues. In art, we see that there's Qing imperial portraits where emperors are portrayed as very luxurious, wealthy, and powerful to help portray their commanding force. Lastly, we see that Confucian is again used through the Son of Heaven, or which is based in its roots of the Mandate of Heaven, where the emperor claims himself as universal ruler since the heavens had sent him down to do so. Lastly, we see that rulers maintain power and control through tribute collection and taxation systems. We see that in tribute collections, foreign countries gave the Chinese emperor luxury goods in exchange so that they could trade in China. Also, we see that in the taxation system, almost all of the Chinese people had to pay taxes, and this encouraged farmers to sell what they had because taxes had to be paid in a currency form like silver or bronze coins.
Moving on to expansion of the Qing Dynasty, we'll learn how and why the Qing Dynasty developed and expanded the way it did from the years of 1450 to 1750, and some of the historical developments from the unit guide for this particular era for the Qing Dynasty is that imperial expansion relied on the increased use of gunpowder cannons and armed trade, and these were used in warfare to expand the way that they did and establish large empires in both hemispheres. Another one is land empires included the Manchu or the Manchurians in Central and East Asia. And third is political and religious disputes led to rivalries and conflicts between states, which was which can be taught for internal conflicts, but mostly for this, it's conflicts with other empires and nations. Okay, so a bit more about expansion. The Manchus of Manchuria declared the founding of the Qing dynasty in the early 17th century, and this was mostly landmarked by the conquering of the Ming controlled Beijing, which was the core of Ming China and signified the fall of the previous Chinese dynasty and the rise of the current Qing dynasty. And uh, for the reasons for why they expanded as much and as effectively as they did, this can be attributed to Kangxi, the second Qing emperor, that who The Qing had great military leadership and were able to conquer much of Russia and much of Central Eurasia under their rule.
Resistance and rivalries. So there's basically two main key concepts. The first one is the land empires included the Manchu in Central Asia, Central and East Asia, the Mughal in South and Central Asia, the Ottoman in Southern Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa, and the Safavids in the Middle East. And the second one is political and religious disputes led to rivalries and conflicts between states. So the problems that the Manchu encountered was that only a minority of their inhabitants were ethnic Manchurians, so the governments had took steps to increase ethnic integration, causing more strengthened popular allegiance to the empire. Members of the vassal states, which were states that had an obligation to the empire, were invited to take part in Qing culture and to train people, allowing them to join the elite circles of society. Many of their inhabitants were also pastoral nomadics, groups of people who moved around, dependent on their livestock. The Manchus overcame this weakness by overriding the principle of kinship with bureaucratic rule, allowing them to refuse the powerful influence of nobles. So the Manchus' rivals. Since the Manchu expanded through Central Eurasia, they were mainly rivals with the Mongols, who were conquering the Dzungar state and had dominated Western Mongolia, Xinjiang, and Tibet. However, they faced lesser threats after the Kangxi Empire defeated Galdan and won many Mongols to his side, which decreased the size of the Mongolian Empire and were later crushed by the Xianlong Empire.
All right, so for religion and culture, there are lots of continuities from previous empires in China, and one of that was Confucianism. So their empire was ethnically and economically diverse, but the Qing centralized power by drawing upon this nature of religion. And Confucianism, like especially Neo-Confucianism, was especially prevalent during the Qing dynasty. And the emperor built many schools which were created to reinforce the belief. As mentioned earlier, the Qing also maintained the mandate of heaven, and they did keep the civil service exam. In regards to economics, the Qing was very economically powerful. The government used their power to influence the economy, which allowed maritime China to flourish. Additionally, their base was formed from agriculture, and to regulate trade, foreigners could only trade with select guilds. And as a result of this, certain merchants from these guilds prospered and became some of the most rich people in the world. In regards to intercontinental trade, domestic trade flourished, yet foreign trade was generally one-sided, and the most important export was silver. In regards to social structure gender roles, this also relates back to religion. Because as mentioned before, the Manchu were outsiders, they enforced a strict social structure which varied between classes, and it divided social, economic, and ethnic lines. This social structure was enforced with Confucianism, like women still held an inferior spot, and women across all ethnic groups were expected to be obedient to their male family members. And the Manchus kept different Chinese people separate because they forbid intermarriage between their people and the Han majority, yet they integrated different ethnic groups into the government.